Well, with all that wonderful stuff out of the way, guys, we are going to jump in and we're going to do the news. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Clyde, and this is Clyde Plays News. Today, our top story is about a new line of European destroyers coming soon to a world of warships near you. But first, let's go over to our second story. This is about ship restrictions and some changes to the ongoing clan battle season, Barracuda, that is happening right now. We are about a week or a week and a half into the season, the 19th clan battle season, and we are seeing some ships become restricted, both in the category of cruisers as well as in the category of battleships. For cruisers, you are no longer allowed to have more than one of any of the ships in this set: Marseille, Petropavlovsk, and Napoli. Now, these ships do not serve the same role. Marseille and Napoli are kind of like speedy ships that could potentially flank on one side. Petropavlovsk is more of a tanky radar cruiser that lodges itself near a cap and defends and keeps people from coming in. So it's kind of interesting to see Wargaming group these together and say just one of these. It's going to change a number of strategies, and I will tell you that my clan used a Napoli and a Petropavlovsk in our opening week of clan battles, and so this will alter our plan. I think I don't know which one we're going to keep, probably Petro, but I'm interested in what you guys think. If you're watching this later on YouTube, hit us up in the comments down below. Let me know what it is you guys are going to run, if this is affecting your loadout, if this is going to affect your build or not. And if not, what are you running instead? If it is, what are you going to run now? Same thing with the battleships. This is an interesting trio, all of which very popular in this season. We ran all three of these battleships in different games over our first week as well. We ran St. Vincent and Ohio primarily, and at one point in the game, our Ohio captain left, and I think we ran a couple of battles with a Kremlin, or at least we were going to. I believe we did. We've got St. Vincent, Ohio, and Kremlin. You're only going to be able to take one of those battleships from that set as well. So again, my clan is affected by this. Let me know how you guys are affected. We're going to probably have to drop either our Ohio or our St. Vincent and come up with an alternative. What ships do you guys think might be good replacements? You know, I think people running St. Vincent could look at an Incomparable. They are not the same ship, but I think if you like that kind of speedy British thing, if that's working for you, you could certainly do that. Without Ohio and Kremlin, two of your big choices for big guns are leaving. Does that mean we're going to see Yamato come back onto the scene? Are we going to see maybe Shikishima? I really don't know, but I'm really curious to see what people are going to bounce to. Nunez in chat says Montana is still a very solid battleship, and I agree. Montana is going to be pretty reliable for folks. That does drop your gun size quite a bit, but you know, well-placed Montana rounds can still delete cruisers, and that is a big part of the battleship's job in clan battles. So I'm really interested to see how this is going to shake things up. I do think the cruiser shakeup is a little bit more aggressive than the battleship shakeup. I think we can find some battleship alternatives. In cruiser land, you know, there isn't something that does what Napoli does as tankily as Napoli does it. Napoli has great armor and smoke, and it does great to run up on those flanks. It does so with a concealment that is less than 11 kilometers. I think it's 10.3 or 10.4. And so when you're looking at alternatives, it's not going to be Henry, which is nowhere near as stealthy and nowhere near as tanky. It could be Venezia, I guess, but still not as stealthy, not as tanky. And so at that point, are you considering going back and running the, you know, what we kind of lovingly or not so lovingly refer to as the Iron Curtain cruisers? Do you start running a Stalingrad, a Moskva, and a Petropavlovsk or something, right? And we don't really like that when it comes to clan battles. They become very static that way. Black Mamba Jamba says maybe a Vermont or a Preußen. I think there are clans who can absolutely take care of, or take advantage, I should say, of those ships and how they're going to fit into their slots. I think Vermont, interestingly, could be a sniper for a group that can set up for that has consistent cruiser fire, and especially if they've got powerful cruisers with larger guns like the 305s on the larger cruiser ships, or well-placed 220s like on Moskva and Petropavlovsk. So I think there's some choices. We'll see how things go. Sully says, what about Grosser Kurfürst? It's always good. I think in certain leagues, Kurfürst will work. I think in certain leagues, Kurfürst would not work, right? Will the reduction in cruisers cause us to see an increase in destroyers in the higher tiers of play? Probably. we will wait and see. But I don't know. We'll leave it at that for this story. We'll jump over to our third story. Our third story is another new line of ships. It's not the Pan Euro destroyers, but it is our Pan American cruisers. Now, this line of ships was announced early, and a lot of folks had comments about the quality of these renders. I'll scroll through them here. We've never really seen Wargaming release renders in this early of a stage. There's no water. Some of them are relatively low resolution, and they don't look fully completed. Like this one doesn't have all the textures and stuff on it. The reason these came out like this was they were doing a live event in Mexico City at a gaming conference, and they wanted to announce the Pan American cruisers at that event, and so they pushed them to the a little bit earlier to let that information get out to that very interested community who's going to be excited to see their Pan American cruisers coming into the game. Of course, there were some questions about, what Pan American ships should show up, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. I'll read a little bit of this. It says, the new branch will consist of ships and projects originating from different Latin American countries: Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Peru, Colombia, and Mexico. Please note this branch is currently under development, so models of the ships are not finalized, and the gameplay concept of the branch may change during testing, which is planned to begin in early 2023. So that means the testing is going to begin in the first part of next year. We won't see the ships probably until spring or beyond. That's Clyde's guess. That is not any sort of real information. Don't quote me on that, because that's just a guess. I'm guessing 3 or 4 months into the year at the earliest. The new ship's main battery will have a medium firing range, good ballistics, which will make them effective at a distance, which is cool. The guns will also have a decent rate of fire. The cruisers' torpedoes will have average characteristics. That means they have torpedoes, by the way. And when we scroll through these ships, you'll see why that's kind of interesting. The good concealment will allow them to get into a good position and be the first to strike when conditions are favorable, or to safely retreat if necessary. Now, Wargaming always writes a really nice story that sounds like it could be a cool way to play these ships, and sometimes the ships live up to that story, and a lot of times they don't. So in this case, what I'm kind of reading between the lines and seeing is that we're going to have flattish arcs, maybe think like Vallejo or Lazo, maybe, in terms of what the gun ballistics will feel like, with torpedoes and relatively good concealment. I'm going to guess 10 or 11 kilometer concealment. Not so good that you can sneak around and be totally invisible all the time, but something like that. It says ships consumables will consist of a repair party and a choice between hydroacoustic search and defensive AA, so it doesn't sound like any sort of radar is going to be available on the line, but we will have hydros, which is a good sensor to have just the same. So yeah, Hercules here at Tier 1 as a river-class frigate built in Canada for the British Navy. Looks like it, so it's going to be very British in flavor. Tier 1's not super interesting. Almirante Barroso is a Brazilian cruiser, Tier 2, that was built and served in the Brazilian Navy between 1896 and 1931. So that looks like that's a real ship. That's cool. Vicente Guerrero is a version of the light cruiser Navarra that served in the Spanish Navy. Looks like there was some possibility, I think, that they were going to buy one of these. I don't know that it actually happened. Yeah, it says it can be assumed that they could have also purchased maybe this boat. So that one's a little bit imaginary. I think actually for Tier 3, this ship looks relatively modern. It's got turreted guns. This superstructure here right between the second and third gun looks relatively modern for Tier 3. I have a feeling that this ship could be a very powerful Tier 3 cruiser, but who's to say? Cordoba looks pretty decent for Tier 4. It's the equivalent of the British Tier 4 cruiser Danae, which is a very, very poppable, very, very lightly armored cruiser at Tier 4. It does talk about how by the 1930s, the D-class cruisers, a total of 8 were built, were already outdated and could have been sold or transferred to a friendly country. So another coulda, shoulda, woulda, perhaps. La Argentina, this ship looks pretty cool. Dual-purpose light cruiser. I like the triple barrel turrets up front. They look familiar. They look British, almost Fiji-esque, but this is not a Fiji. Based on the light cruiser Arethusa. I don't know a ton about that cruiser. The Almirante Cochrane here is starting to look more advanced as we continue down the line. Coronel Bolognese. This thing looks British, even though it has an Italianish kind of sounding name. It's a Fiji-class cruiser that was built in Britain. She was transferred to the Peruvian Navy in 1960 and was named after the Peruvian national hero. So this was an actual ship that did get constructed, it seems. And so on. As we come down, they start looking more American. The Ignacio Allende. The Santander here is starting to look particularly modern. Looks like just 3 turrets there, 9 guns with the Santander. So, I mean, if you think about this thing at tier 9, the Santander would need a pretty good DPM. Now, the trouble is they haven't given us any stats for these ships, so we're forced to speculate a little bit here. But with only 9 guns, this would have to have a reasonable DPM. And if we're going to have flat arcs, I mean, these could feel a bit like that Vallejo, a bit like that Lazo style of ships, as long as they have reasonable range. And I'm curious to see what the range is going to be on these boats. I don't believe there's any information like that in this article. I do like the crane out back. That reminds me of, you know, Seattle and Worcester. And then down here, San Martin at tier 10. This one, of course, looks like it has the best graphics and stuff drawn up for it. But it is looking pretty good. This says it's another version of the Worcester-class cruiser, this one from 1949. The cruiser is a further development of the Worcester-class cruiser. The general layout and architecture are very similar to the Worcester. The propulsion system has a similar layout as those used on Worcester-class cruisers. In order to reduce the space taken up by the funnels, it says that it was divided into 2 funnels. Yeah, that looks good. Argentine Navy could have purchased such a cruiser from the USA after the war, had it happen as it happened in reality. The true Brooklyn class with 2 Brooklyn class light cruisers. So they did buy Brooklyn classes, they didn't buy Worcester classes, but they're saying, what if we did this? So that is kind of what we're looking at for this line. I know some folks had a lot of opinions about what ships should have been in this line. However, looking at what we're going to get, I think this could be an interesting line. That said, I do love real steel ships, and it is a little disappointing when we don't have a ton of those in the line for real. So I think some of these ships, of course, are coulda, woulda, shouldas. They might be real ships, but they weren't real Pan American ships. But the Pan American navies were constructed largely of ships from Western countries. Like for those of you guys who play Hearts of Iron, when you fire up that game at the beginning, if you play as Brazil or Chile or Argentina or any of these countries, Venezuela, you have a navy, and it is comprised of typically British and American ships from like the 1920s, battleships and battle cruisers and things like that. And I believe that, you know, that game tries to stand a little bit closer to historical reality than World of Warships does. And so like that concept of export ships or old ships from these countries is totally realistic, even if perhaps the ships they chose here aren't entirely realistic. Hey Zib, thanks for the follow, and how are you doing? Welcome to the stream. Okay, let's go. Well, before we leave this, I do want to share something that I think some of you guys have probably already seen as well. This is also kind of related to that same thing. You may have heard a little bit about this. Let me pull it up over here so we can scroll through it. About a year ago, this was in November of 2021, a group of World of Warships fans from Central and South America. I don't know exactly where these guys are from, but they did put together this interesting article where they said, these are some ships we think could be in the line. And they go through and they provide a whole bunch of examples, and they did a bunch of research and posted this on the internet. I think they even sent it to Wargaming and said, hey, this is what we think. Of course, Wargaming has chosen to go their own direction, and they certainly have autonomy and authority to do that. It's their game, it's their company. But this is a cool read. As you can see, this is written in Spanish. So if you want to read it and you don't speak Spanish, if you open this up in Chrome, there is a translate button at the top. You can translate it to whatever your local language is, whether that's English or otherwise, and give yourself a read through this. I think it's kind of interesting. If you're watching this later on YouTube, I will post the link into the description down below. If you're watching right now on Twitch, I'll drop it in chat and you guys can go check it out yourselves. Let me grab that link for you. I found that to be kind of an interesting little read, and you guys might as well, if only to see what else might be there. And even if Wargaming doesn't choose those ships themselves, we could possibly see some of these ships show up as premiums later on. So I think it's just kind of an interesting speculation exercise to go take a look at those. Okay, now let's get back to our top story for the evening, and that is our European destroyers. Why is this the top story? Well, A, it's newer news than the Pan American cruisers, and B, I like destroyers, and I really think I'm going to like this line. Now, before I just praise the concept of an idea of a European destroyer line, let me point out that this is the absolute worst line that Wargaming could have added to the European nation in World of Warships. The Pan Euro nation does not need more destroyers, because it already has a bunch of destroyers, and thus it already has a bunch of captains that are already occupying their destroyer builds, and it has a bunch of top tier premium destroyers that are unique and different from the tech line destroyers, and thus it needs 1 million captains to service a single tiny ass country that only has destroyers in it. Wargaming, we don't need European destroyers, we need European cruisers. So get at me when you can put some cruisers in here. I realize battleships might be a bridge too far. I think a lot of these countries that are going to be in the Pan Euro line wouldn't have built battleships, but they would have built light cruisers or even heavy cruisers. And so we need a Pan Euro cruiser line so we can utilize our commanders from the tech line on all of those freaking premium Pan Euro destroyers you keep jamming into the game. So Wargaming, go back to the drawing. Give me these. I still want the Pan Euro destroyers line, the new line. But give me cruisers, bro. Go give me some cruisers. Okay, rant over. Now let's talk about this wonderful, wonderful thing that we got, which is totally superfluous and unnecessary, and yet I'm still excited about it. Pan Euro Destroyer line number 2 splits off at tier 5. This line was announced, and you can see we've got these same low resolution drawings again. Look at this one. This one here, the Grom, has the lowest resolution drawing of anything that we have seen, I think, thus far. It's basically some polygons, some 3D polygons. But if we scroll down and we see all of these are like this as well, and that is because just like the Mexico City gaming convention where they announced the Pan American Cruisers, they were in Poland announcing these destroyers on, I think it was last Saturday. So when I was streaming my Saturday morning stream, we took a pause and we went and we watched the announcement when Chegg and Seraphis announced this line to us. And we just watched it live on stream. If you want to go watch the VOD of me watching their stream with my stream, you can. It was kind of interesting and weird. But I was super interested and excited to see what was coming on. So they're starting off, well, let me go through this basic description at the top. We talked earlier in the Pan American Cruiser line discussion about how we get this kind of nice narrative from Wargaming, and sometimes the ships that come out the other end are a little bit different, but it does give us an idea of what they're trying to build. And of course, we always build something, and it's never exactly what we started with. It says the ships of this new branch will represent such countries as Turkey, Norway, Greece, Yugoslavia, and Poland. That's awesome, because it means we didn't just get 6 more Swedish ships, right? I'm all about the Swedish ships, but I love the variety here. Please note the branch is currently under development, so the ship models are not finalized, and the gameplay concept of the branch may change during testing, which is planned to be completed in the first half of 2023. In the current concept, these newcomers are gunboat destroyers equipped with smoke generator and, starting at tier 8, with surveillance radar as well. These ships are going to have smoke and radar. At least that is the initial idea. And we asked them when they were live on this, we said, hang on, is it smoke or radar, or is it smoke and radar? And they went, smoke and radar. We're going to have both. And we were just like, what? Because that is absurd. It says, apart from that, all ships in the branch are equipped with engine boost. And then there's a period. Now, if that's true, if that is the end of all of the consumables that these ships have, that means they don't have damage control party. I think they have damage control party, but they said, let's talk about their consumables: smoke, radar, and engine boost. And then they stopped talking. Damage control party is a consumable. I think they have damage control party, and they just didn't include it because they assume it. But what? So let's watch for that. I think they're going to come out and tell us, yes, they have DCP, don't worry about it. But they didn't mention it, and that is a little bit odd. It says the main battery guns are going to have a good damage per salvo, starting from tier 7 with flat shell ballistics, which allow for comfortable gunplay at long ranges. I like that because I like gunboat destroyers. I think that could be really cool. The torpedoes used by all ships of this branch have high speed, but there's a small number per salvo. Unlike the first branch of the European destroyers, they have higher damage but lower range, and the torpedoes can be set to fan out in a standard wide and narrow spreads. If you guys don't know this, if you don't play the Pan Euro destroyers today, they have a narrow and narrower spread instead of a narrow and wide spread like our traditional, US and Pan Asian and Japanese destroyers that we have in the game normally. These ones are going to have that standard wide array and so on. Starting from tier 7, they have good speed, and starting from tier 8, they'll have a large HP pool. However, they don't have the strongest AA, and their concealment is mediocre. I was trying to take concealment and mediocre and make one word, concediocre. So let's take a look at these pictures real quick. We've got the tier 5 Moavanet. I don't know if that's being pronounced correctly. I am trying, so if somebody knows, that's great. This is a Turkish destroyer laid down in 1939. It was one of 4 destroyers ordered by Turkey from the Great Britain. And it certainly looks very British, doesn't it? Tier 6 is the Stored. This is a British S-class destroyer that was transferred to the Norwegian Navy in exile. And then later it was formerly purchased by Norway and then served until 1959. So another real steel boat. This ship looks really, really cool. I like these turrets. I like this. This looks fast. It looks neat. I know it's tier 6 and they said the speed comes on at tier 7. But I think this is a good looking hull, and I'm hoping that it's a fun little tier 6 to play. Tier 7 is the Grom. Again, very low resolution rendering here at the moment. She's got a couple of guns that have textures because those are reused assets from somewhere else, but the ship itself is extremely textureless. This does look a little bit like Bliskovica, and that is in fact her sister ship. So she was designed in Great Britain and built under the Polish order at the British shipyard J. Samuel White & Co. in 1935 to 1937. So that's cool. It's another real ship. If we come down, tier 8 is the Split. I believe Split is the name of a coastal town or a place down there. I should go check the maps, I guess. This ship was being built and then it was captured by the Italians, and it wasn't really finished and put into service until 1958. And so there's a little speculative historical design here where Wargaming is showing the ship as if it would have been completed in 1941 had the Italians not come across and captured it. Hershey Hank says, yes, it is I have visited Split in Croatia. Oh, that's cool. Spelled as it is pronounced, and it is on the coast. Well, cool. Thank you. Or pronounced as it is spelled. The next one is so low resolution, we don't have a picture of it. That is the tier 9 destroyer Lambros Katsonis. It has main battery guns that are the secondaries off of Hood. 140 millimeter guns in single gun shielded mounts. That's going to look pretty cool, I think. In fact, we should go take a look at the Hood real quick. Let me see if I can find it. It's going to have these turrets, probably, but single barrel. You guys can see those there. So we'll see how that one comes out. And then, of course, the top tier, the tier 10, is the Gdansk, the Gdansk, the Gdan SK, which is a destroyer based on the design of the French destroyer Mogador. Now, everybody wants a tier 10 Mogador. And here it is. It's going to be a Pan Euro ship. It would have been commissioned by the 1950s and modernized to accommodate Soviet torpedo armaments and ASW armaments. Again, because in the 50s, the Iron Curtain was very much still in effect. And so Poland would have been supplied with those kinds of Soviet influenced weapons. Now remember, it's a tier 9 or tier 10 Mogador with smoke and radar and a large pool of hit points and excellent guns and firepower. What could go wrong? I really don't know, but like all of you, I am eagerly waiting to see when they do finally announce the statistics for these ships. We're going to dive into that, and we'll look into that some more as well. But we've got Gdansk, we've got Split, and all these other wonderful destroyers coming in, joining us. And I don't know exactly when. It says the testing is going to begin in the first half of 2023. So when we looked at the Pan American Cruisers, those were in the first part of 2023. This is the first half. So I'm going to guess we'll see testing happening for Pan Am Cruisers in January, February, with a release in maybe March, April. And then these will be in test maybe in March, April, with a release closer towards the middle of the year. But again, all speculation. There are no facts about the future. And thanks so much for watching the news today, guys. I hope you guys have a fantastic time. If you're watching this later on YouTube, of course, we'd love to have you come join us on Twitch. You can check us out at twitch.tv/ClydePlaysLive. The schedule is updated there, and it is accurate. We do stream about 3 times a week, and we'd love to have you come be a part of the show. If you're watching here on Twitch right now, I apologize I didn't start our giveaway before the news, but we will start one as soon as we get back to give away some Black Friday containers. And all of that out of the way, thanks so much. Have a great time. Take care of each other. Be nice, and we'll see you in battle. Bye.
This has been the news on Clyde Plays Live.